Overwatch draft for week 3. I'm Jay Mill. I got my partner Willie B, and we've also got Chris Moxley from Campus to Canton joining us, one of our finalists from last year. So we know he's experienced in doing this. He's going to give you a lot of great tips along with ourselves. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. A little disappointed I couldn't take it home last year, but that doesn't mean that I've given up. Coming on early in the season, try to get it out of the way, post a high score, and just coast the rest of the year.
That's right.
And hopefully,
Yep.
we're sitting pretty at the end of the year.
I hope so. Just as a quick recap, last season, as proof that you'll need to pay attention to what this man is telling you, Chris Moxley turned out 123.5 points last year in week 4. That was one of our top 8 or 9 scores ever in the 3 years we've been doing this as a collective group beyond just Willie and myself. He not bounced back, but maintained that level in week 8 in the semifinal round with 95.4 points, which was enough to get him to the finals against Nino, who ultimately won. But yeah, hopefully you can see Nino somewhere down the line and redeem that championship loss. But overall, very great performances last year. Excited to have you back. I know you guys are doing a lot of things over at Campus to Campus to grow the hobby. We appreciate what you do, and I think I was telling you before we hit the record button, I was tuned in to your pregame show for week 1 last Thursday when the games were about to kick off. I was really excited, and it's just good to hear people as excited, not just about college football, but the fantasy side of college football like you guys are doing. So really appreciate the work you're putting in there, Chris, with those guys over at Campus to Canton.
Yeah, we got a great crew, and our college fantasy crew is awesome. Really smart guys over there. So excited for another year of college football, college fantasy. It's our passion, right? Something that we all love. So
it's what we stay up
really excited.
And get up early to take waiver notes for. Hey, you guys are obviously noticing you can't see Chris, but in his absence, as far as the video, Willie B and I have sported Chris Moxley-esque shirts. We know he likes to kind of rock the colorful outfits, and so in his honor, since he has no video, we've decided to brighten you guys' video screens up with some colorful shirts here. But regardless, let's jump into last week's results. It was a little bit of a mixed bag, not even a little bit of a mixed bag, a very mixed bag. But our auxiliary member, my son, Dorian Miller, turned out a top 7 of all time performance with 127.4 points to steal the show. Willie, what do you think about Dorian just showing up, helping us out here and turning out a top 7 performance of all time?
That's one thing about Dorian. He always prepares. Sometimes he has a lot of hidden gems that we may not have on our radar, and he still usually hits on them. So that's really impressive every time he shows up and shows out.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, he wasn't alone, and I'm sure we didn't have this much influence on the movement. But I noticed his top performers, Desmond Reed, the running back from Pitt, and his top wide receiver, Ty Felton. This gives them 2 back-to-back weeks, but both were at 10% or less rostered. They're both like right around or just over the 50% mark. So Desmond Reed and Ty Felton are probably long gone in most leagues, unless you're in one of those smaller, 10-team leagues with, 15 roster slots or something like that. Say goodbye to Desmond Reed and Felton, who both had over 30 points last week. But he also had support at the running back position from Claiborne from Wake Forest, who may or may not be selected this week again because he is still under 30. Interestingly, even with the score he put up, he had the worst quarterback. We were all decent across the board at quarterback except for Dorian. Pavia probably had too easy of a matchup and only ended up with 14.4 against Alcorn State. The Gridiron Scholar, John Lobb, that's where he performed best. He had Sorsby going against Pitt. They took the early lead. Pitt came back to steal that one from the Bearcats. But John's best performance was the quarterback at 23.4. at all the other positions, I'd kind of look at it combined, like 2, 3. We had 5 out of 8 receivers kind of hit the mark. You see them highlighted in green here, hitting, getting close to that 15 points or above level. And same thing at the running backs. We had 5 out of the 8 running backs kind of hit a mark that wouldn't have been too disappointing if you had them in your lineup. Kevin Coleman saved me, quite frankly. I ended up with 87.7 to finish second. We always talk about how we're trying to hit that 90-point barrier as kind of the standard, which we like to have quarterbacks that are going to get you 20, running backs and receivers that are going to get you 15, and a tight end that'll get you 10. Well, I was looking like I was going to struggle up until Kevin Coleman got an 80-yard touchdown pass from Chapin late in the game there for Mississippi State as they tried to come back against Arizona State. But that kind of saved me and got me about 15 extra points that I needed to finish the week respectfully. Otherwise, my starters all did okay, but nothing too spectacular, as I mentioned. But I still got 87.7. Again, sadly, the Gridiron Scholar and our guy Willie B, our resident here, both had scores in the 45-point range, and I don't want to elaborate on that. I don't want to rub it in your face, Willie, but do you have anything to say moving forward following your 45-point performance?
Well, you know me, I don't like to waste points. So once we found out Walker was not going to play, knew it wasn't going to be a 100-point week. So sorry we picked so bad, but like I said, there's no reason to waste points at that. At that point, it's not going to be a decent week. So it is what it is.
Right. Well, I will say that the most confusing outcome on your team was Bauer Sharp, tight end for Oklahoma, who seemed to be the clear number 1 tight end target in week 1, for OU with 5 targets. And then this week they switched to Jake Roberts, who was the guy we all thought in preseason might be the tight end 1 there. So I think we just got to let a little more time play before we see if we can even trust taking any tight end from Oklahoma. I don't know how much they're going to alternate them, if week 1 was a fluke with Sharp getting the targets and then week 2 being Roberts. But, you live and you learn. These are the struggles of the early part of the season, is trying to figure out who really is number 1 at their position on the team. So,
well, as far as Oklahoma is concerned, we're going to say that it's not just the tight end position. I mean, outside of Burks, they need to find an identity of who's going to do what, because right now they're struggling. I mean, you can't have just a little bit over 200 yards of offense and expect to beat teams, especially. I mean, it doesn't matter what division. It doesn't, Big 12, SEC, whatever. You have to have more offense than they have for you to have success. And we're going to find that out soon. Arnold needs to figure it out, and that offensive line.
Right. Yeah. So it did seem to be pretty underwhelming. Barely squeaking by Houston, when meanwhile their counterparts, Texas, put a stomping on Michigan to show that they are definitely contenders for that national title. I'll open it up to you guys for some final thoughts on anything that stood out in week 1. Chris, we'll go back to you. Before we get into the draft, what was the highlight of week 2 from your perspective?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from potential overreactions was my big takeaway. I felt like we have a much better handle on which offenses are highlighting which players through 2 weeks. So I think there were a lot of people who were concerned about Evan Stewart at Oregon, big game against Boise State. Abu Sama and his limited usage week 1 comes out, has the lion's share carries against Iowa. A lot of reeled in, I think, reactions to some of those week 1 performances. And I think we're finally starting to get a handle on which offenses are planning on doing what. So that was my big thing. What is actually going on?
Right. And that's kind of the fun part. That's kind of one of the reasons I think we all get reeled in, is kind of the guessing games and the strategy of, figuring out exactly what you said, which offenses are for real, which offenses and players may have just had, really good matchups in week 1 against these FCS teams. So, again, you kind of struggle to see who the real running back 1 is and the real number 1 target at a lot of these positions. But, by the end of next week, it's going to be crystal clear in most of these situations, who you should drop and who you should add. But kind of leads us right into what we're here to do, which is tell people who we think is the real deal that still might be available that they can go spend some free agent bucks on, because we saw a lot of money being spent on the wrong players potentially in week one. Let's see if we can shift people to the right players here going into week 3.
All right.
And with that, we will move it over. And by the way, shout out to Devi Jake. He was supposed to join us, had some family issues pop up that he's got to deal with. So all the best to him and the fam. He will be joining us, I believe, next week with Jared Palmgren from Chasing the Natty. So we look forward to that. But meanwhile, Chris, we knew you could carry the show on your own. So, the pressure's on.
Yeah, seriously, no pressure. Gosh.
All right, Willie, you're kicking us off. So let's hear what you got.
Well, like I said, we can't be any worse than what we had last week. So are going to take a few more chances than I usually do. But we're going to start out not going running back again, but we're going to take Eli Holstein from Pitt.
Okay, so you're not messing around at quarterback this week. He's 15% rostered, 26.6 points a game. Very consistent in the first 2 weeks with 25.5 in 1 week, 27.7 in the next. They've got West Virginia. He was on my list, one of the 5 or 6 guys that I've got targeted. So I think that's a solid pick, Willie. And he was definitely somebody I would consider if we're looking at my top 3 guys. So you got one there. I will happily jump on the guy that I liked best out of all the available players this week, which is maybe the overlooked wide receiver at North Texas. There was a lot of talk about Ward going into the season, and I think the 150 plus targets that North Texas was having to replace with all the guys that left. And so whoever wide receiver 2 at North Texas was going to be seemed to get ignored, and that's DT Sheffield, who has had 23 targets in 2 games for 22.9 points a game in the first 2. And he's got Tulsa in week 3, which isn't very scary to me. So I'm going to go DT Sheffield from North Texas, knowing that Ward is there getting his targets, but there's more than enough targets to go around at North Texas to satisfy 2 wide receivers. And he's only owned by 6% of teams or 7% of teams. So you should have a good chance of grabbing him in just about any league still.
He was my top wide receiver as well. So
nice. Okay.
I thought I might get him, but that's all right. That's all right.
I'm glad I took him first then. But to make up for that, Chris, we do a snake here one time. You'll get back-to-back picks, and then it'll come back to me and then Willie after that. So you're the one person that gets back-to-back picks today. So that'll make up for me stealing Sheffield from you.
So I'm going to go, I feel pretty good about receiver this week. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of guys in the same tier. I think the thinnest position is tight end. So I think that's something I want to address first.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Texas tight end Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
He's been fantastic through 2 weeks. A lot of people thought it was going to be Amari Niblack. It looks like it's Helm. They have a really soft matchup this week in, I believe they play UTSA. Mm-hmm. I think that he's going to be a part of this offense long term. Very low rostership percentage, so he's available in almost every league. He's a guy that I think you can feel comfortable at this point plugging in your lineups. So I'm excited about the potential for him long term.
Yeah. And it looks like
I only had 2 tight ends I actually wanted this week, so I felt like I had to get one of them.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I had him in my notes. There's so many. We talked about Niblack kind of, moving on from him in our best and worst performer picks at the end of last week, and considered Helm for this week also, but just am a little leery based on just the total number of weapons that Texas has, but I can't be mad at you for going that way. I mean, he's averaging 14.5 over these 2 games, and he had 22 versus Michigan. So he's clearly beaten Niblack out to hold on to that spot there. So yeah, I think he's definitely worth a shot. I didn't expect what he did this week against Michigan, but hopefully he keeps that up. Like you said, he's got a good matchup for week 3.
Yeah, I like him. So I think quarterback is actually pretty deep as well this week. There's some good matchups across the board, but I'm going to go with the guy who I feel confident in probably the rest of the season, just considering how much this passing offense throws.
Yep.
And that's Georgia Southern quarterback J.C. French.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
I think you're going to get 35 plus pass attempts every single week out of Georgia Southern, if not more. This is an offense that throws all the time. It's kind of Clay Helton's MO. And I don't really think that's going to change. They get South Carolina State this week. He might not play the full game. That's my concern. But given the neutral game script pass rate, which is top 5 in the country, I think you're going to see him do more than enough before it gets too out of hand. So I'm hoping that he puts up big first quarter, first half numbers, and we're sitting pretty. I think he's a high floor this week, even if he does get pulled early.
Well, that's what I was hoping he would do last week. So good luck with that, because I expected it. It just didn't quite happen.
Yeah, that was a little surprising. And I think they struggled to pull out that win against Nevada, who's actually, done better than a lot of people might have expected so far this year, putting up some or being competitive in their games. But Willie, I don't know what to tell you. French still got you 17. I realize,
right,
which is decent,
right.
But I think
I was expecting 30 though, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's we'd agree. It's a good pick this week, and a guy that just kind of have all year long. That shouldn't have many games under 20 for sure. So yeah, I think that's another good pick. And with that, I will move to running backs. I don't have to take my quarterback till the end. Thank you, guys. I'll have some time to think about that. I'm going to go with there's 2 that I like. I don't know if either one of you guys are. I'm going to take the one that I think you guys are least likely to take first, or most likely to take first.
Okay.
And it's a guy that I had this past week, which is Cedric Alexander from Vanderbilt. I like the fact that he's proven to be the wide receiver or the running back 1 at Vanderbilt. I think like Pavia, he was just caught up this week in a match. He did okay for me again, but he was going against Alcorn State, and I think it was kind of what you see a lot in week 1, where he just got pulled a little early because they didn't need him and Pavia to do a lot of the work this week. But I think against Georgia State, it was a level up. They're kind of in that perfect level of competition for fantasy where Georgia State will put up enough of a fight that, Vanderbilt will, need to keep the starters in just about all of the game. So I think you see him bounce back and get a 20-plus week going against Georgia State. So I like Cedric Alexander for a second week in a row.
All right. I like it.
Yeah. And Willie?
All right. So we're going to go. It's kind of like Chris just said. I'm not sure how long this guy will play, but he is averaging his 15 carries a game, and I like what he's putting out. He's should have his first 100-yard game, and we're going to go Cam Porter from Northwestern.
Okay.
And they have Eastern Illinois, so hopefully it's going to be quick work. Getting that 100 yards, hopefully 2 scores.
Yep. Yeah, he's. I guess last year he was a little bit disappointing. I think he had a fairly decent 2022. Fell off a little bit last year, but yeah, he seems to be the real deal, in 2023, and clearly the running back 1 for those guys. So can't be mad at that. It's an interesting week 3 matchup against the FCS opponent for week 3, which is a little more unusual. So That should definitely work to your benefit. I like that. And it's back to me. So I will take the other running back that I wanted since Willie B left him for me, which is Aaron Young from Old Dominion.
Yeah,
I've gone in as of last night, rostered barely anywhere. They were showing 0%.
He's at 1 now.
He is at 1. So overnight, he caught some people's attention. I like the carries. This is a case of volume. I think he's in the top 5 of running backs around the country, and the largest percentage of carries he's getting from his team overall. I think he's making up about 55%, if not a little bit higher, percentage of the total carries that running backs are getting at Old Dominion. He's had 16 in week 1, 25 this week in week 2. He hasn't hit the end zone yet. He's averaging 13 points a game, but we did see him move up from 8.5 points in week 1 to 17.5 this week. Also, he's a former Rutgers player, so I've seen him play in the past. He moved on when he saw Monangai was going to start getting the bulk of the work there smartly. And he did actually score this week against East Carolina. South Carolina held him back a little bit in week 1, but I think he's a guy that should get you about 20 carries every week, and you can't go wrong with that. He is a classic volume pig, as we are all learning to describe these guys as these days, thanks to a particular writer who's out there doing very well in the scene. So there we go. I've got my running backs filled. I'll let you guys fight for the rest.
I was not expecting all the running backs to go there, so that was a little disappointing. Porter and Alexander at the top of my list. I didn't have Aaron Young as high, and then when you brought him up, I was looking through his stats, and I was like, "Well, that was missed by me." I like that call a lot. Point of clarification for my next pick: how are we handling dual eligibility?
It's just like you would in the majority of leagues. If they're dual, you would have to select which position they go into, I guess. So it's not quite like Fantrax. You could put them in either spot, but you make that decision.
Okay, so I'm going to take a player with dual eligibility for my running back position.
Okay.
Even though he's primarily a wide receiver, and that is Treon Sibley at Liberty.
Makes sense.
I think he's emerged as the one in a very productive offense, probably a top 3 offense at the group of 5 level. He is a player that was highlighted in the offseason as somebody they want to target. Very versatile. I like their matchup against UTEP this week. I'm a little bit higher on the UTEP offense. I think they can score some points. So I think this game is not going to get out of hand too quickly. I think you'll see Caden Salter throw a lot. I think Liberty needs to try to score as many points as they can if they want to make the playoff, especially with what Boise State did yesterday, kept it very close against Oregon. I mean, those are probably the top 2 teams you're looking at to make that 12-team playoff. So I like targeting the Liberty offense here.
Okay. Yeah, they got a scare last night, before Cooley's 60-yard touchdown run at the very end. They were fearing for their lives and their hope for a playoff spot. Were you guys up to see that Liberty game? Or
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Have it on any of your screens with the 5 games that were going last night?
Yeah, it was not as exciting as the last game turned out, but I did like it, and Liberty has one of the easiest schedules, and it's going to start now.
Oh yeah. That makes it even better pick there. I just have to say I totally forgot or didn't know how big Cooley was for Liberty. I didn't realize they had a bowling ball there in the backfield with Cooley. He's huge. It's crazy. But anyways, I guess now I will move on to let's see. You guys both have a quarterback. I have a couple tight ends left, so I'll fill my wide receiver spot.
I think this is this me or no?
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we do now keep going in the regular way. It's not a snake. Okay, you're right, Willie. I tried to
Okay,
steal it
all right,
from you. Yeah,
all right.
my bad. My bad. I'm glad I didn't get the name out. I wouldn't want you stealing my.
Oh, I should have waited one more second.
Right. But yeah, go ahead. The moderator is corrected.
All right. Sibley was not the guy I was wanting, but makes me wonder where you're gonna go next. So uh, we're gonna go. We're gonna go. I have a couple of guys on this list, but we're gonna go wide receiver from Virginia. We're gonna go Trell Harris.
Okay.
They have, I believe this is Maryland, who's 130th against the pass.
Yeah.
He had 11 targets this past week, caught 7 of them for a score against Wake Forest, and that was a thrilling game, 31-30. Didn't do as well against Richmond, which you would expect that against the Spiders, but so now I just hope that he can keep that volume up. So we'll take that chance.
Yeah, that's interesting. He was off my radar. So again, I mentioned quite a bit through the season that even those of us who are looking at this stuff nonstop can't catch everybody, and everybody assumed Malachi Fields was going to be the number one get there, but even if Trell Harris is sharing targets with him. You can't ignore the fact that he had 11 this week, and I would kind of go with your way of thinking that he probably only got 2 against Richmond because he only needed to get 2. I think it's a much bigger sign of what's to come if you're playing against Wake Forest and get 11 targets, and I don't think you worry about 2 against Richmond at all. So that's a good little sneaky pickup there, Willie.
Yeah, and then the fact that he got in the end zone in both contests. So yeah, 1%. We'll take that.
Right.
You got to have one every now and then.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do a little gamesmanship here with my next pick, and if you end up doing well with Holstein at Pittsburgh, I'm gonna go ahead and hope that I can benefit as well with Mumpfield, from Pittsburgh at wide receiver. Kanata Mumpfield, he's rostered by 15% of teams. He's averaging 23 points a game, and I like the improvement we saw from week 1 to 2. He went from 16.6 in week 1 to 29.3 here in week 2, and he's got 3 touchdowns already on the season. And he's not competing with Bub Means. It was kind of a 1A, 1B scenario in Pittsburgh the last couple of years with Means and Mumpfield. But I think you have a really clear wide receiver 1 now in Pittsburgh with a much better quarterback than anybody expected there. Holstein, I think, people were cracking jokes when Pittsburgh announced that he was going to be the guy. But Holstein's proven to be a solid quarterback, and Mumpfield's been proven. Now he's just getting more targets. So I'm gonna roll with the Pittsburgh pick with you, Willie, and double up here as we both have some guys from that team.
All right.
All right, Chris.
I like the Pittsburgh approach. I mean, that offense is running 80 plays a game. It's just insane. And I was one of the people making fun of Eli Holstein too. So
yeah. I know a couple. I think that's where I heard that chatter was a couple of the Campus to Canton guys, the kind of making their Holstein jokes. But hey, we all were. I don't think anybody expected what we've seen in these first 2 weeks from him.
Yeah, it's a really good offense with offensive coordinator Cade Bell. Really excited to see what Pittsburgh does rest of the year.
Yep.
I'm gonna do what I just did with Treon Sibley, and I'm gonna take another player with running back wide receiver eligibility. Okay. I think these players specifically are really valuable waiver pieces because you could plug them in 2 different spots, and I think there is a defined role for them in the offense. Sibley is obviously a wide receiver. This player is has a position that he occupies, which is the minor back, and it is UTEP running back Cam Thomas. With what he does is he gets about 7 to 8 targets a game out of the backfield, and he can also run the ball for sure, but it's a really defined role that nobody else on this team has. So I know that Scotty Walden wants to target him at minimum 7-8 times per game. He's been productive through 2 weeks. We've seen those receptions. This is on the other side of the Liberty matchup, a game that I think is going to be high scoring, very creative offensively. They want to get this guy the ball, and he's one of the few players that head coach Scotty Walden brought to UTEP from Austin Peay. So he has familiarity in this system.
Right.
He's a guy that I've added in a couple spots actually last week based on the role, and I'm going back to the well this time.
Okay. No, I like it. He's another one that was really off of my radar. I know we've all been looking at Javon Jackson over there, who is the real running back. You've grabbed a guy with dual eligibility in your sneaky way here. You've got 2 receivers playing running. You're going to have 4 receivers in your lineup. But what we've learned in our home league, we don't allow that. We kind of force teams to make a decision. If it's proven they're playing both, they can pick where they want them. And if it's proven that they don't play a position, we just eliminate it from their options for them. But we've learned, we're the tougher ones when it comes to making those rulings. And it seems like 90% plus of leagues just roll with whatever Fantrax says a guy is. So for these purposes, it's completely fine for you to bend the rules a little bit, Chris. We will allow it.
Yeah, and it's a little different for a home league as opposed to just across the board with Fantrax. So definitely sneaky. I do like it though. Run and shoot.
Yep.
I'm not trying to take second place this year. I'm gunning for first. So gotta get creative.
He's pulling out all stops. That's cool.
I like it.
That brings it back to you, Willie. I don't need to tell you this, but I will anyways. You don't need to take running back yet because
that's correct.
Yeah, that is. Fair enough to have realized that already.
Yeah, that's correct. I was thinking about going the route with the JC French connection with Cobb, but I guess I'll go ahead and leave that for Chris to take a little bit later. If he wants to do that. We're going to go Alex Bowman from Tulane.
Yep. Okay. Well, tell me what you think about that matchup, because that's the only reason I probably wasn't going to take him this week. What do you think?
Okay. The matchup itself does not necessarily scare me. Right. Only because some of these things just never change. There's always just open zones, still trying to figure out some schemes. Now, if they can't run, then that may change, but they're always going to try to stop the run first, which should leave some open seams for Bowman to get his catches. Even if they can't get outside, he should be the guy. So I'd imagine he's going to have more than his 2 receptions that he's had each of the last 2 games, and probably if they do score, he's going to be the one finding that end zone. I expected for him to at least have 1 to 2 big chunk plays against this unit, only because if their offense cannot stay on the field, that defense is just going to get, they're just going to be on the field too much. I mean, that's just kind of what almost happened last night. Right. So they better figure out what they're doing on offense, and because if they don't, this is just going to leave their defense vulnerable, and it's going to catch up to them quickly.
And it's a name that most CFF veteran should know of. He was on and off of this list almost all of last year. So even though it seems like people should know who he is, he's a guy that people just don't completely buy into for whatever reason. But I want to say he was a top 25 tight end last year when all was said and done. And he had 6 targets. I don't know why he only caught 2, against Kansas State, but at least 2 he caught were for touchdowns. So he's another guy that scored in both of his games, which is a great sign. And we know who he is. So he's a guy that's got a track record that he's been there for Tulane when they need him. So, I think that's a good one. I might have just shied away only because he was playing Oklahoma, and I had a couple other guys I liked equally as good, which I guess I can go either way here. I can let you know who those guys are that I thought were equally as good at tight end, or I can go quarterback. But
I might give you that one, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. Who you think? You talking about another tight end?
Yeah, the only other one that I was thinking about was Joe Royer from Cincy. But
okay, that wasn't one of my guys. What's do you have his points per game? The Cincinnati guy?
13.9 in both games.
Okay, yeah, I missed him. I'm looking for something a little more fun and interesting, and I think that comes in the form of Michael Trigg from Baylor.
Oh wow.
He's on 17% of teams as of last night. Willie can let us know if that changed overnight. He's averaging 9 points a game, which for a tight end is about all you're asking for and all you need. And his targets doubled from 3 to 6 this week as they stepped up in terms of the competition that they were playing, which tells me, he's going to be a part of this offense in a real way. Because when they played a real team like Utah, they threw the ball to him 6 times. So look for Trigg to, finally become a regular name that pops up, off and on throughout this season. He's probably one of the most hyped tight ends we've had in CFF in the last 5 years, and then became one of the most intriguing tight ends because of all the wrong reasons as he's, switched teams a couple of times. But I think he's found his home at Baylor. I'm going to make things fun and interesting by putting him in the lineup this week and pushing him as my tight end to look for to keep moving up. And he's got Air Force this week, which they can slow the game down with their offense, but I think he still gets his targets. So there you have it.
All right, Chris.
Interesting. Neither of y'all went Joe Royer, who was my tight end too.
From Cincy, okay.
Yeah,
that was
he's
the guy I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, big fan of his. If I didn't go home, I certainly would have gone that direction. Very involved in the offense, and the offense looks very good under Brennan Sorsby.
Okay.
So now I got to make a decision on wide receivers. And wide receiver, to me, this week is honestly very deep. We talked about Dalen Cobb a little bit earlier. He's definitely on my list.
Georgia Southern, yep. If you want to do the small team stack here, go with French and Cobb. It's an option.
But I am a little worried about being tied to an offense that might get pulled in the first half. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go a different direction, and I'm going to go Kevin Coleman at Mississippi State. Okay. Kelly Akari's missed the first 2 weeks. I don't know that he's coming back this week. Mm-hmm. Coleman has proven to be a productive option for Blake Shapen, and this offense runs a crazy, crazy pace under Jeff Levy. I've been impressed with just how many sheer plays they're running. I don't know that it's very efficient. I don't know that it's very good, but I do know that Coleman is seeing a huge target share, has 2 very solid weeks thus far. And I have no reason to think that that's going to change this week. They get Toledo. Toledo's a good MAC team, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to shut down the Mississippi State offense. I actually think Toledo might be able to keep it close because I don't really like the Mississippi State defense. So that tells me there's probably more opportunities for passing regardless. So I'm going with a guy who I think is the wide receiver 1 there.
Yeah, and he was my high scorer this week in the week 2 waiver watch, and kind of got me up to the level we like to be. He had that 80-yard touchdown as they were making their comeback, and he proved he can take it to the house. And he's getting consistent targets, which is what it looked like he was at least going to be fighting for that number 1 spot while Akari's out. So I like that a lot as a guy that had him, who was my best performer this week, and as long as he's under 30%, I think you'll just keep seeing him here. That's a good pick. Willie? All
right, so we're going to go wide receiver. So hopefully his quarterback will stop throwing it to the other team. Mm-hmm. But we're going to go Luke Grimm from Kansas.
Oh yeah. I had him. Yeah, he was in my top 3 or 4 for this week. He's at around 20% and 21.1 points a game, and he's got UNLV. So I think you got everything working for you there. He's definitely the guy at Kansas.
Yeah, he's averaging 10 targets. He didn't have the yardage that you'd expect, but I just like I say, it's the volume now. He has scored 2 touchdowns, so do like his chances against UNLV this week.
Yep, can't be mad at that. All right, we're down to my final pick here in the middle, and so I'll talk it through. there's three guys that I'm actually legitimately considering here. I like the consistency you've seen from Levitt at Arizona State. He's had, I think, 22 points in week one, another 21 and a half this week. They're playing Texas State, which I think is going to be a really good matchup for him. But, again, kind of playing off of Willie, noting that, Virginia's playing against a really bad defense there at Maryland, or at least according to Fantrax in terms of the matchup rankings. I like Calandria at Virginia as well. And I like the guy on the flip side of that game with Billy Edwards, who's had 24 points in both of his games. I think just with what I saw late last night, I was going to go Calandria, but I'm making a last-minute pivot here. Levitt and that Arizona State offense have been pretty impressive. He's been very consistent, and I think they've got a really good matchup against Texas State, slightly better than what Calandria would see against Maryland. So I'm going to go Sam Levitt from Arizona State, who's on 20% of rosters, and seems to be a guarantee to at least get you 22 points now every week if he can do what he's done in the first two. So that would be my final pick in a last-minute change for me there, who I thought I would end up taking at quarterback.
All right.
Chris, you get to finish off with a fourth receiver for your team.
I'm a fan of the Levitt pick. I mean, I caught a little bit of that game, and Cam Scadaboo is amazing. What a player for that offense.
I think he finished with like 280 or something like that. Yeah,
something like that, all purpose. I mean, just a dominant performance.
And he runs hard. He loves football. You can tell that.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said earlier, there are a lot of receivers I like this week. Since everybody already has one, I'm not spoiling anything. Mm-hmm. I've thought about going Magdalena at Fresno State. Big week last week, 235 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Another 200-yard guy, Nick Marsh, true freshman at Michigan State against that Maryland secondary. They get Prairie View A&M, so I'm a little concerned about that matchup. Prairie View A&M is one of the worst teams in the FCS, so it could get ugly real quick. I'm going to go a guy that is not owned in a lot of spots, or rostered in a lot of spots, and I think is the wide receiver one and big play threat for this offense. It's a little off the board, and it is a little bit of a risk, but I think the potential is massive, and that is Quavis Humphreys at Sam Houston.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think that he could have a monster season. I think he is going to be the wide receiver one there over Ife Adei and Noah Smith. And they get Hawaii this week, and I didn't really like what I saw from Hawaii's defense week one against Delaware State, another really bad FCS team. They played it a little bit tighter with UCLA, but I think they could score on him. So I'm going Quavis Humphreys.
Yep. And, our guy, Luke Probasco from the G5 Hive had him week one. He didn't disappoint in week one. He had 18.3 points. Did fall off for what I guess he just didn't reach the end zone. Had the same number of targets and catches, 5 targets, 3 catches, just didn't produce the yards in the one big play, but we certainly know it's there. The G5 Hive had the beat writer from Sam Houston on, kind of deep into the offseason, and he kind of gave everybody the heads up that Humphreys was supposed to be the guy last year before he got injured. He went down. That's when you saw Noah Smith step up. And now he's emerging to Noah Smith's detriment. And I think you're right. He's likely to steal that spot as the true wide receiver one at Sam Houston for the rest of the year.
I like it.
Yeah, and by the way, Noah Smith only had 1 catch this week against UCLA.
Wow.
He's a guy I'm very, very nervous about rostering right now.
3 catches on the season for Noah Smith, guys. Crazy. So.
All right, so with my last pick, Jeremy, we may have to get this guy on, get VP on here, because this is another volume pick kind of a guy. We didn't get to see that against Norfolk week one, but we definitely saw it against Old Dominion, and that's going to be, I believe, it's going to be Rajah Harris. He had 26 carries for 131 yards and 2 scores.
What's his first name?
I think it's Ray J.
Okay.
But they go against App State, and let's see here. I think,
yeah. Raj.
Raj. Yeah.
Raj. Yeah, Raj
Okay.
Harris from East Carolina.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they get App State. Like I said, hopefully it's a volume thing. I mean, 26 carries. Hey, that's what you want. And he's rostered in 6% of leagues.
Yep. I think you're right. I think the lower volume week one, this is exactly what Chris was talking about, that you start to find out in week 2 and 3. You don't know what it means that he got 6 carries against Norfolk State and a 42-3 win. Like, you look at that and say, okay, maybe he's not going to be the running back one that we thought he might be. But when you play Old Dominion and you only win 20-14, and Raj Harris has 26 carries, I think it becomes very clear that is the running back one for East Carolina.
Yeah, and I actually just I like their off. I'm going to watch this one a little bit closer than the first two. So yeah. I'm gonna find out a little bit more about what ECU is doing.
Right. Okay.
I like that pick a lot too. He was definitely on my list.
He looks like a consensus pick. In my notes, I actually had him above Alexander, but I don't know that I even had it numbered correctly here, but definitely one of my top picks. I'll jump, since we're on running back and we're looking at kind of who we had that we all liked. A name I'm surprised didn't go to anyone, but maybe it's because of the matchup, is Braden Sloan, who is the clear running back one for Ball State, who we didn't see in week 1 because they had a bye, but he came out and had 21 carries for Ball State this week. They struggled against an FCS team, but again, when the game's tight and you're playing your starters the entire game, it becomes more clear who your go-to players are going to be. And Braden Sloan for Ball State is a clear running back one that you'll want to have once Maction starts. Maybe this wasn't the best week, and now that's probably why none of us did take him, because they're playing Miami of Florida, not Miami,
right.
Ohio. But Sloan's a guy to keep on your radar. I wouldn't have been mad if anybody went back to a guy that was on the list for Dorian last week either, with Damon Claiborne from Wake Forest. But they are also playing Ole Miss, which is more of a matchup problem.
Mm-hmm.
You would think it could be a little bit of a matchup problem, but he's averaging 21.2 points. But I'll pass it over to you guys. Chris, anybody remaining that you wish you had room for, or even if it's a play that would have been a bad matchup this week that guys can look to pick up maybe for the remainder of the season, since we've got the starters we like for this weekend here specifically? Any bigger picture plays that you see on your list?
Yeah, I like the Braden Sloan call a lot. He was also heavily targeted in the passing game. He might be their whole offense at Ball State.
Right.
I had 2 running backs that didn't get picked. Wayshawn Parker at Washington State. They get Washington.
Right.
I think it's probably a little too tough of a matchup. And then Trey Wisner at Texas. They get UTSA, and I wouldn't call him a great athlete, but he just runs downhill, and it's a good offensive line and probably a good matchup. So I thought about him a little bit. I talked about quarterback and why I felt. Oh, sorry.
No, they've been using him quite a bit. I think more than people thought.
Yeah, I'm honestly pleasantly surprised with his usage.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterback, I felt like there were a lot of options this week. Thought about going Emmett Brown at San Jose State. They played Kennesaw State. Keon Jenkins at FIU. They get a FAU. Yep. And then I considered Tyler Huff at Jacksonville State, who had a pretty good performance against Louisville last week. They get Eastern Michigan, but I didn't really want to bank because I think he's very, very volatile. And then I named a couple of the receivers that I was targeting last pick. But the one that I didn't mention that I think is probably on my radar rest of season, same issue with Damon Claiborne, though, is Donovan Green at Wake Forest. I think he could have a big 2024. But Ole Miss is probably a little too high of a step up in competition for the Demon Deacons.
Right. Yeah, that's the only reason I didn't take him either. But he's got a ton of targets. Let me see if I have it in my notes. How many he's got? Yeah, he had 16 targets this week and 13 the week before, I believe, or something like that. So he's oh no, it was 30. He had 31 points this week and 16 targets this week against Virginia, and I think you didn't see Green do as much in week one because it was the weaker matchup. But yeah, he really stepped up. But I didn't like that matchup either. But I do love Green quite a bit. Seems like he'll be back from the injury and 100% now. Willie, you got a couple?
Yeah, as far as quarterback, I mean, I thought someone may take a chance on Ethan Vasco. He's a dual threat from Coastal Carolina since they have Temple.
Mm-hmm.
I know he had a down week this week, but it really wasn't needed in that blowout against William and Mary.
Right.
But I do expect him to have, at least 10 carries to go along with his passing this week against Temple and what could potentially be kind of another blowout.
Okay.
And Rourke from Indiana, I thought someone might take a chance on before he goes up over 30. And then we talked about Royer, the tight end, and Weiss. He's a little dinged up. That's why I steer clear from that, because I don't need any red flags. I don't need any red flags this week.
Right. From where?
Missouri.
Okay. Oh, Weiss, the wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped on you here as far as moving from tight end to wide receiver.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I just saw the headline. I'm not sure. Like, it sounds like maybe Luther Burden just got sick during the game and had to leave. Like, I didn't. It sounded like just some kind of weird flu type thing happening, or some people just were saying he got sick.
Mm-hmm.
Left. It didn't seem like an injury. So we might have got a few extra targets in that second half in the Missouri game, based on Luther Burden going out.
Well, and the fact that they really didn't, they haven't needed either one of them. 51-0 and then 31-0 against Buffalo this week. So I mean, they haven't really been tested quite yet. So I mean,
right.
We'll see what happens. That's just another reason why I stayed away from them. Just hard to tell where the distribution is going to be.
Right. There seems to be a lot of tight ends, and there's a couple here that I've got left. Colin Weber from Charlotte. He's only on 2% of rosters. If you're having to dig deeper, he's had 15 targets in 2 games, and they play Garner Webb. Charlotte's going to want to kind of get going there. He's a guy who I think last year had close to 50 targets and has really been off of people's radars, even though he was heavily targeted last year and is already heavily targeted this year. He's got 8.5 points a game with no TDs. So imagine if the guy can get in the end zone, it would be a nice little bonus. And then I would point out 2 quarterbacks maybe for long-term pickups. You mentioned the running back at Ball State, Chris, maybe the only guy, but I think there's something good brewing with their quarterback, Simonza. He had 34 points this week. Again, they struggled against an FCS team, so they had him in the whole game. But I did hear some things in the offseason about him, and that he's actually got decent skills. And once MAC play starts, you never know what's going to happen. But I think Simon's is a guy to kind of you could stash away if you've got a deep roster. Regardless, our lineups are set. Chris, we did want to establish if we find out about injuries before the end of Wednesday, we will allow replacement picks since college football is so odd in terms of discovering injuries. We may not know if anybody's hurt until Saturday, like Willie B. found out about Walker from Wisconsin this week. But if any of us hear about anything, we can swap anybody out, since in real life people could swap out their guys if they hear about an injury situation early. Otherwise, we just wanted to get that on the record that we needed to have a formal injury policy for replacements. So that's where it is on that. That's it for me. Chris, I said I was going to ask you, how are your FCS bets going this week to close us out? And do you have any interesting FCS plays for the betting lines, or are they not out yet?
We are they're coming out earlier than ever before, but it's still a tough market to break through. But we did have our main Black Bears come through against Colgate this week, so that was a big one.
Okay, all right, very nice.
But you just love football, love college football, and I enjoy watching these kids grind it out in the FCS too.
Exactly. It's a true the Sickos committee. You should be part of that group there on Twitter. They're constantly posting the FCS scores and updates as well. Willie, any final thoughts before we get into week 3?
No, one more name I'd like to throw out. When I was talking about Temple, is going to be Dante Wright. I do like the wide receiver there. I do like what he's putting on tape. But other than that, thank you for watching and listening, and good luck this week.
All right. See you guys.